At 5:12 a.m. local time in Russia's Far East, the first window shattered, not from explosions, from ice pressure. In Kamchatka, overnight snowdrifts climbed past the 4th floor. In some buildings, they reached the 9th. Thermometers plunged to minus 55 degrees Celsius. Doors would not open. Stairwells vanished behind walls of compacted snow. Entire apartment blocks turned into sealed concrete vaults. And then the unthinkable happened. Residents began exiting through windows, 4th floor windows, sliding down packed snow just to reach the street, just to find food.
This was not a movie set. This was January 2025.
Across Russia, from Moscow to Irkutsk, transportation froze. Buses failed to arrive for over 60 minutes in minus 20 degrees. Heating pipes burst, power grids flickered, emergency vehicles stalled. Yet the roads around the Kremlin stayed clear. The images spread fast. Telegram, X, YouTube, roofs shedding ice blocks onto sidewalks, ambulances stuck, parents dragging children through frozen corridors, the social contract cracking under pressure colder than any sanction. This was not just a winter storm. This was a stress test. And beneath the white silence, something deeper was breaking. To understand why a snowstorm turned into a national crisis, the map matters. Kamchatka sits more than 4,000 miles from Moscow. It is remote, volcanic, militarized, a region long treated as strategic territory, not civilian space. But what happened there was not isolated. It was a preview. The same failures rippled westward, into Siberia, into the Urals, into Moscow itself. This is a war economy under pressure. Since 2022, Russia has shifted into full-scale militarization. By 2025, defense spending reached historic highs, consuming between 6 and 7% of GDP, according to figures cited by Reuters and Defense News. That translates into more than $100 billion annually, the largest share since the Soviet era. But money is finite. Fuel is finite. Manpower is finite. What expands at the center collapses at the edges. Municipal budgets were slashed. Snow clearing contracts canceled. Spare parts imports stalled under sanctions. Thousands of truck drivers, mechanics, and utility workers were redirected, either drafted or absorbed into defense factories offering higher wages. The contrast is brutal. Cheap tools vanished, expensive weapons multiplied. A snowplow costs tens of thousands. A missile costs millions. In theory, Russia should handle winter better than anyone. Extreme cold is not new. Soviet-era systems were built for minus 40, but those systems are old. Many heating pipes in Siberia date back 40 to 60 years according to reporting by Deutsche Welle. Maintenance was deferred, replacement postponed. Then the cold hit harder and longer. In Irkutsk, temperatures dropped to minus 55 Celsius. Pipes ruptured, entire districts lost heat and power. Thousands were confined indoors, wrapped in layers, relying on candles and battery packs. Remote schooling was announced. Internet failed. Electricity followed. In Moscow, the crisis looked different. Less dramatic. More symbolic. Buses scheduled every 5 minutes arrived an hour late. Platforms overflowed. Crowds packed into freezing vehicles. Roof ice fell onto streets near Izmailovsky Boulevard, damaging cars and forcing closures. Under normal conditions, municipal crews would clear roofs daily. This time, they did not arrive. The message was unmistakable. The state still protects strategic assets. It no longer guarantees everyday safety. This is the deeper context. Not weather, not chance, but a system that prioritizes projection of power abroad over resilience at home. And once that balance tilts, winter becomes an accelerant. The breakdown did not happen all at once. It arrived in waves. First came the silence. In Kamchatka, municipal hotlines stopped answering. Snowplows failed to appear. By dawn, entire courtyards were invisible beneath compacted snow. Cars disappeared. Entryways vanished. Residents realized movement itself had become dangerous. Then came the improvisation. People opened windows not for air, but for escape. They lowered bags with ropes. Children slid down snow ramps formed by weeks of accumulation. Neighbors formed human chains to clear narrow corridors between buildings. This was not emergency response. This was civilian adaptation. Within hours, the video spread. Telegram channels filled with clips showing snow stacked higher than balconies. Commentary was blunt. No panic, just disbelief. State television stayed quiet. Regional officials blamed historic precipitation, but the numbers told another story. In Petropavlovsk Kamchatka, snowfall exceeded 3 times the monthly average. Yet weather alone did not immobilize emergency services. Fuel shortages did. According to regional dispatchers cited by BBC, multiple ambulances could not be deployed because diesel reserves were exhausted or frozen. This was the first twist. The crisis was not just physical. It was logistical. Then the second wave hit Siberia. In Irkutsk, aging heat infrastructure failed in sequence. One pipe rupture triggered another. Pressure fluctuations spread through entire neighborhoods. Power stations reduced output to prevent catastrophic damage. Darkness followed. Families clustered in single rooms. Schools shut. Clinics struggled to operate backup generators. Local authorities urged calm while quietly requesting federal assistance that did not arrive. At the same time, rail lines slowed. Freight cars carrying food and heating supplies stalled along frozen tracks. Delays cascaded. Supermarket shelves thinned. Prices spiked. Inflation pressure, already elevated, tightened further. Economists quoted by Reuters warned that weather-driven disruptions were amplifying sanctions-related bottlenecks. The third wave reached Moscow. Not collapse, disruption. On paper, the capital functioned. On the ground, the rhythm broke. Workers waited in -20-degree conditions for transport that never came. Drivers were missing. Vehicles lacked spare parts. Ice blocks detached from roofs, forcing police cordons around residential blocks. This was the moment perception shifted. For years, Moscow residents believed distance insulated them. Border regions suffered. The Far East endured, but the center remained stable. Now the cold arrived at the doorstep. The final twist came from below the surface. Meteorologists began warning about what comes next. Snow levels reaching multiple floors mean one thing when temperatures rise: massive runoff, overloaded drainage, weak dams. The memory of the 2024 Orenburg floods resurfaced. Experts interviewed by Janes quietly raised alarms about compounded infrastructure risk. Winter was only the first act, and the system was already strained. What looks like a winter emergency is, in reality, a strategic exposure. Russia's economy entered 2025 under visible strain. Official growth figures remained positive on paper, driven almost entirely by military production. Tanks, artillery, drones, and ammunition kept factories running. But this growth was narrow. Civilian sectors stagnated. Infrastructure spending declined in real terms. According to analysis cited by Reuters, more than 40% of federal discretionary spending is now linked directly or indirectly to defense. That reallocation hollowed out municipal resilience. Snow removal, road maintenance, heating system upgrades, all delayed, all underfunded. The cost surfaced immediately. Logistics disruptions triggered price spikes in food and fuel. In remote regions like Kamchatka, fresh supply chains stalled completely for days. In major cities, shortages were intermittent but visible. Inflationary pressure intensified, particularly for basic goods. Economists speaking to BBC noted that weather shocks are now amplifying sanction effects rather than acting independently. The military impact was equally stark. Rail networks that support civilian freight also carry military equipment. When tracks slowed or froze, priority shifted. Civilian cargo waited. Military shipments moved. This trade-off revealed a core vulnerability. An army reliant on rail logistics cannot operate efficiently if domestic transport systems are brittle. Western defense analysts quoted by Defense News raised a pointed question. How does a force sustain long-distance operations when it struggles to maintain mobility inside its own territory? Manpower shortages deepened the problem. Bus drivers, utility technicians, rail maintenance crews. Many were redirected to defense plants or mobilized units. Replacement pipelines lagged. Training takes time. Winter does not wait. The social consequences followed fast. Urban professionals, once politically disengaged, began reassessing risk. Not ideology, practicality, safety, reliability. Surveys cited by Deutsche Welle indicated rising interest in relocation among educated urban residents, not just border regions. Moscow, St. Petersburg, Siberian hubs. This is not mass flight. It is selective erosion. The loss of skilled labor compounds economic fragility. It reduces tax bases, weakens service delivery, increases dependency on federal transfers already under pressure. Psychologically, something more damaging occurred. The expectation that the state manages crises fractured. Informal networks replaced official channels. Telegram groups coordinated roof clearing. Neighbors pooled fuel. Civil solidarity expanded where institutions retreated. For an authoritarian system, this shift matters. Control relies on dependency. Resilience breeds autonomy. Every ice block falling from a roof carried symbolic weight, not destruction, disillusionment, the quiet realization that protection is no longer guaranteed. Strategically, Russia absorbed a blow not from sanctions or weapons, but from neglected fundamentals, infrastructure, logistics, trust. Winter exposed what war spending concealed. What unfolded across Russia's frozen cities did not go unnoticed. In Washington, Brussels, and Beijing, analysts watched closely, not the snow itself, but what it revealed. The contrast is striking. Europe draws its own conclusions. In 2022, the Kremlin warned Europe would freeze without Russian gas. 3 winters later, the picture reversed. The European Union expanded LNG imports, filled storage above 90%, and diversified suppliers. Meanwhile, Russia, sitting atop vast gas reserves, struggled to heat parts of its own territory. Analysts quoted by Reuters described the situation as a reputational setback more damaging than battlefield losses. Spring will come, snow will melt, water will move fast through systems already strained. Flooding risks rise. Sanitation challenges follow. Each phase tests the same question again and again. Can the system adapt? Or will stress compound faster than repairs? Internationally, perceptions have shifted. Rivals see vulnerability. Partners see risk. Observers see a power forced to choose between sustaining war output and maintaining domestic stability. So the questions remain. Will continued militarization drain civilian resilience beyond repair? Can a war economy sustain legitimacy when everyday security fades? And as pressure builds from weather, sanctions, and infrastructure decay, where does the breaking point truly lie? Share your view in the comments. Subscribe for deeper analysis. This story is far from over. The United States watches from another angle.